Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts, where every single week we have a book club style discussion about a podcast that we were recommended last week. And at the end of the show, we're going to recommend a brand new one, and we're going to talk about that one next week. I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach. And we are on the final episode of this year's Spooky Month. And we're finishing it off with 13 Days of Halloween, an Aaron Mahnke show produced by a bunch of people. Aaron Mahnke, obviously, iHeartRadio, Bloomhouse TV, and Grim and Mild, that's part of Aaron Mahnke's media group.
Yeah.
And so for anyone who doesn't know who Aaron Mahnke is, the show lore is definitely what launched him. So here's his profile on the Grim and Mild site. Grim and Mild founder Aaron began his podcasting career in 2015 with the launch of Lore, which went on to become a breakout hit. Aside from racking up over 250 million downloads over the past 5 years, Lore has been adapted for 2 seasons of television on Amazon Prime and is a 3-book set from Penguin Random House / Del Rey. These days, Aaron stays busy writing, voicing, and producing Lore, Unobscured, and Cabinet of Curiosities, as well as executive producing Noble Blood and a whole slate of upcoming shows. In 2019, Aaron also published his first comic book series, Wellington, through IDW. When he's not traveling, he enjoys being home with his family and reading by the fire with a nice glass of single malt scotch.
Yeah, that guy loves his scotch. Oh, and I don't know if I've told you guys this story. I met him once. I met him and I told him the secret of how to make the best guacamole. So I've made his life better, and he's made my life better by making Lore. But
I like how
I've definitely
not even
made
a part
his
of the
life
story
better.
anymore.
You weren't there.
I was not there. I didn't meet him multiple times. It's just no longer. It's no longer about me.
Zach, how'd you make his life better?
I made his life better with just meeting him. He was like, "Oh wow, I met the famous host of the Podcast Discovery Show."
Oh, now you're the host. Okay, fine. Jeez.
No,
I'm the co-host.
I had to do it. I had to do it because you did it.
That was like the thing Josh did. Remember?
Yeah, Josh did always do that.
So I'm just the co-host, huh? Yeah, but no. So no, Aaron Mahnke is everything he touches kind of turns to gold. Not because it's like he doesn't have like the Midas touch. He just puts a lot of thought, and he's very smart with the things that he does when it comes to all of the podcasts, his business. We saw him do a seminar at Podcast Movement about like the business end of podcasting, and he talked about a lot of stuff that we never would have thought about, to be honest.
Yeah, very interesting.
Very smart stuff.
Very helpful for us, like learning to be podcasters. So it's kind of crazy to be just in the room where he's essentially giving a lecture on how to be a smarter business person with your podcast. So overall, really nice guy. He could have been essentially like, I am Aaron Mahnke, I don't really want to talk to you. That is not at all how he is.
No.
He is the nicest guy. So it was, we had a great experience there. And we listened to this week another great one of his productions. And apparently, I think that his main role on this show was production level. He did do some voiceover in the episode. But other than that, I think that he's mainly producing and leaning into the kind of the production side of shows, which will be a kind of a cool new avenue for him because he's made so many great ones on his own.
Yeah, no. And what I really liked about this one is it's kind of like this culmination of a bunch of big names. So it's not just Aaron Mahnke and Grim and Mild or whatever, but it's iHeartRadio and it's Blumhouse, which is a TV that makes horror movies and stuff like that. It's the arm of the horror genre, and it's also hosted by Keegan-Michael Key. He's the what do you call it? The caretaker in the show. And if you don't know him, he's Key from Key and Peele, but he's also dude, I looked at his IMDb. He's in so many things.
I will always remember him from Mad TV. I think just because that's the first place I saw him was on Mad TV.
I didn't know he was on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
probably like way down on the list, because
I mean that was what, 90s it ended?
Yeah. He actually he's got a fine arts degree, a master's in fine arts in theater from Penn State.
Hmm.
And some of the stuff that he was, I didn't know he was in so many cartoons. Now that I think about it, and I've watched all these cartoons with my kids and stuff, he's in so many cartoons. He's been in Green Eggs and Ham, which is a TV series, Rick and Morty. Love Rick and Morty. He was in The Dark Crystal. He was in The Lion King, the newest one. He was in Toy Story 4, American Dad. He's been in so many cartoons just as a voice actor. Hotel Transylvania, like all of those. He's been in so many cartoons. Bob's Burgers, Samurai Jack, Archer. So The Simpsons, he's been a voice actor in a lot of things, and he is a great voice actor on this show. I've listened to all the episodes now, or up to now. I think there's 5 days left as we record that I haven't listened to because they haven't come out yet. But it's a great show, and the concept of the show is fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about the format and the concept of the show, because it's a little bit different.
It is. And okay, first of all, I do think it's a really cool format, and I am interested because it feels all linked together. But go ahead and tell them kind of the general premise.
So basically, you are a guest at Hawthorne Manor, which is this giant manor house that was built by this enigmatic architect, which they make reference to a lot. And you're being kind of guided around from room to room by the caretaker, played by Keegan-Michael Key. And along the way, you're meeting different characters, different people. And when you meet those people, the caretaker will usually be like, I got to go do something real quick. He'll leave. The person you met or have just met will tell you a story, and it's always, a spooky story. And that's the format of the show. But they've recorded it in this, like, I don't know. They had a name for it.
Is it dynamic? I don't know. But like anybody that's familiar with ASMR or whatever, where it's in different sides of your ear. It's definitely,
they call it 360 surround sound technology. Okay. They have that. So yeah, as their thing.
You hear people moving around you as they're talking, and like essentially they'll pop up in one ear, and there's a little bit of like jump scary elements. It's not intense like that, but like
some of them are. Yeah, there was some later on that were not as bad as the first two. That were worse than the first two. I mean,
yeah, it really is. They clearly have gone all out for the audio recording on this show, and so you do feel it from the very beginning. They didn't go over the top with the Foley, which was nice because sometimes that almost takes me out of it. But it's there. You do kind of feel that. You feel a general ambiance of being in this house, and there's things happening. It's if you're into kind of the audio drama format of very rich storytelling with kind of cues and interesting things happening, this kind of takes that to the highest level, where you're going to hear every little thing that kind of makes this a very rich story. And they have gone obviously out of their way to make as great sounding audio as they possibly could.
Oh, it's spot on when you come to audio production. It's crazy. And thank you, Evening Cicada, in chat. It is binaural. That's the way you say that, right?
Binaural.
But that is the word I was thinking of. They don't have it on their website anymore. That's the way they talked about it, where it's like surround sound. That is the word. I don't think I pronounced it right, but that's it.
This show best listened to with something that's on your head or in your ears. Speakers are not going to do full justice to what can happen if you listen to this with nice headphones or even earbuds, just something with stereo audio so you can get something going on.
One of the things that I thought was kind of funny about the show is, and he does it throughout the whole series, is the caretaker will refer to you and ask you questions, but of course you can't answer them. And it reminded me of like Dora the Explorer,
Yeah. Or like Blue's Clues, where they like look at you waitingly, like, are you going to answer?
What do you need? Handy dandy notebook. Like I was like saying stuff out loud like a small child would. But
what were you saying?
Yeah, I was answering all of his questions. I don't remember what the questions were.
He was just saying swipe or no swiping the whole time.
That's exactly what was happening. Swipe or no swiping. But so the first episode that that they open up with was called The Entrance. And so you're brought in to the manor for the first time, and he's kind of telling you a little bit about the architect and everything like that. And then you meet the first character, and his name was Soren. And the story was, I liked this one a lot. I liked the story to this one a lot.
I liked it too. Creepy. Really
It
creepy.
was real creepy. And I did like that aspect of kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to get into politics or anything like, but like prepping and like somebody being the bad guy, but you don't even know who the bad guy is. It's just like you've heard from some sort of media source that there's a bad guy coming after you, that there is a them.
No, but the coolest part is that's the start. But it devolves, or it changes into, okay, this is not where I thought it was going. But yeah, essentially you go in thinking exactly what you're talking about, like, oh, this guy's just a kind of eccentric prepper, but it quickly turns into something different. And honestly, I'm a little on the fence about even fully telling how the story ends. You know?
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't, because if you haven't listened to it, definitely there would be spoilers.
Yeah. And
on both of these, probably.
Yeah, people should check this show out. But yeah, that's kind of the setup for this. Same exact thing where the audio is extremely creepy.
I will say,
acting is extremely good.
Maybe it's because of COVID. Maybe it's because of just the sound quality. It is too good on this specific one. And we had a friend mention it as well. He has like this hacking cough part of the story, and it made me feel uncomfortable, man. It was uncomfortable because it sounded like he was coughing very close to you.
Yeah,
I did not like it.
They do a pretty good job of basically this whole thing feels creepy. And I will say this is not a hard spoiler, but one of the things that they keep saying throughout this episode is like, don't go out at night because you can't trust anyone, and they harvest at night. So that's what
I think that should be like the title to that story is, they harvest at night. That guy did have such a good creepy voice.
Yeah, it's really like the voice acting on this show is incredible. And that's part of why like we just like this show, and so we don't want to spoiler it, because really you should kind of go through this experience. It's pretty cool.
I had some other episodes that I wanted to mention later on, because each episode's been good in its own way, and completely different. That's what I liked. Every single episode is completely different, and there's a new voice actor in every single one. And so far, every single voice actor's been so good. And they just have like a specific quirk. Like he's got a very creepy voice. The next person we're going to listen to has a very like panicky, neurotic,
like scared,
paranoid voice. Yeah. So good. Like
it's
such
really
good voice acting job on both of the episodes that we talked about. So the next episode was called The Cauldron. So he takes you to like the kitchen part, where there's like this cauldron that has like green fire, and it's boiling, making some sort of concoction. And apparently, he kind of opens up, the caretaker kind of opens up telling you about what he smells from the concoction, and it's venison stew that his mom used to make. And then he explains, well, you probably smell something different because it's a different smell for each person. So I wanted to ask you, what would you smell if you were in this kitchen? Like something that meant something to you, like a smell of food that you would smell from the cauldron.
In like a good way?
Yeah, like a memory, like a very strong memory, or like a sense memory for smells. I think mine, I'll start then, would be like tamales. I love tamales. It reminds me of Christmas. It reminds me of, family, usually staying up way too late making food, and then being really tired the next day, but smelling it in the house and it just being so good.
Honestly, when you said Christmas, I definitely thought of one. And it's Buckeyes, or as we called them, peanut butter balls. Because every Christmas we would go through, and Mom would start making all the peanut butter stuff, and we'd have to roll them. And she wouldn't let us dip the chocolate because she just rightly assumed that would be a nightmare mess. But we didn't get to do that. But the whole house smelled like peanut butter, and so it was great. That definitely reminds me of Christmas. I told my roommates that that's happening this year. It's been too long since I made everyone in the house sit down and roll peanut butter balls so that we could all get really fat over the holidays.
Just what we need. Right after COVID, just roll into,
Just
roll right into.
Just lean into the fact that we're all going to gain weight and, well, are going to already
continue gaining weight.
Yeah. It's just, we're going to keep rolling through this thing. Literally rolling. Eventually, we're all just going to be rolling around. It's going to be Wall-E, the last scene in Wall-E.
Oh, God. Yeah. That is such a great movie. It really is. But yeah, so he takes you into the kitchen and he talks about the cauldron, and then he introduces you to, I forget, I didn't write down the lady's name. I can't remember her name.
I cannot remember her name either.
But the story is fascinating. And at first you're like, why has she got all these light bulbs and why do they keep popping? And again, this is like one of those things where I guess we'd give a spoiler if we went too much into detail, but it's about being really paranoid about the dark and darkness and shadow and like these evil presences that are in those areas, anywhere that there might be darkness. And it's very fascinating. I mean, to the point where like she has lights everywhere. She never turns the lights off. She doesn't get under the covers because there's darkness underneath the covers. She doesn't wear a hat because there's darkness between the hat and her head. It's like this different level of paranoia. And like we said, her voice acting is top notch, so like amazing.
Because the first one's like creepy and like he's like coughing and stuff. This one you can like hear the kind of the panic, the paranoia, the neurotic sound of her voice through the whole time.
So I've listened to a bunch of the other episodes, like I mentioned. The next one, and I do like it at the end of every episode, they have kind of like a teaser piece from the next episode, and it's great. So the next one is called The Garden, and this one's, it's a creepy one. I don't want to give any spoilers either, but it's this lady that's trying to entertain these people and she has to make cupcakes, and there's a very secret ingredient, and it's a little bit one of those, like a little bit cringy, but it's also just so well made. And it's more of a, she's got more of the, I'm telling you, the voice acting just so good, so flippin' good. And then the one after that was called like The Great Library. This one was terrifying. I mean, like, coming from a religious background, this one has a lot of like religious fanaticism or whatever, and someone taking it too far to the point of like murder and stuff, because, like you've seen like in horror movies, like, oh, you got to kill the demon baby or something like that. It's similar to that. And it's just, it's so heart wrenching and so well made. But the one that has scared me the most is the one called The Sunrise Lounge. And it's about like haunting and like creepy children. And like, it reminds me a lot of like The Ring, or like if you watch the movie, you're going to die or whatever. Oh,
okay.
So there's that component to it. And it's just, at the end, you're like, oh, crap, now I'm haunted. Dang it, I shouldn't listen to it. That's stupid. Like, I shouldn't have watched this movie because now I'm going to die.
Yeah.
I remember that when I was younger with watching The Ring for the first time. You remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was a scary movie.
Yeah, no, it was good. Well, it was a good one.
I saw somebody say they watched it again. Like, how was I scared of this when I was in middle school? But it scared me when I was in middle school. I have not watched it again, like, ever, pretty much.
Yeah, I haven't
ever watched that as an adult. But it was a scary movie when it came out to me.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And we would go intentionally scare ourselves after watching it too. So yeah, it was a good one. Okay, I have a question for you. Because I felt like the first two episodes, the one that we actually reviewed, there was like a them that was always there. There was like something that was kind of like a through line. Does that continue? Like, is there like kind of a through line, a potential like connection to all of these stories besides them all being in the house?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because like specifically like the cupcake one, I don't think there's anything like that. The other two, there could possibly something where there's like a through line. I think I'd have to listen to them again, to be honest. I mean, and that's the beauty of talking about stuff. I didn't think about it from that perspective, so I wasn't looking for it.
Because both the first two, there's like a them. There's like a whoever it is, them that are coming for the lead storyteller and everything. So I'm curious if that kind of that them is somehow involved in all this. Because did they even say why, like, we are going into the manor?
No, they haven't.
So I do think that there is cool storytelling going on here that is probably not going to be fully revealed until the end of the thing, until the last episode.
So. I really am hoping so. And because that's the thing about a story like this, or a podcast like this, it's got an overarching through line story with you going through the manor, but it also has like standalone stories that have nothing to do. You could listen to them and still get the main bits and pieces. And I love that. I love that kind of feel where it's almost like the Twilight Zone. You know, like the Twilight Zone, There's always a little bit of a through line to it, but you could watch them by themselves and they're great.
And I do feel like that's an art. It's an art to have something that's great standalone, but still connects for the people who are longtime fans or people that want to go through an entire story, because I think both these things are good. And if you can have both of them at the same time, you've got a great show. Because, I think that anybody could listen to either one of these episodes randomly and kind of just appreciate it for the random story element of it. Because they essentially come off as kind of short stories that are very well crafted and everything. So they're very immersive, but it's a short story, a kind of a creepy short story. So if you want to go into it just that way, you can. But I'm hoping there's a big overarching idea or something's happening here. And I hope so, at least, because it feels like that's something they could wrap on the last one and get ready for next year.
Yeah. No, I really hope. Okay, I want to say something. This is an Easter egg. I mentioned this to Zach. It has nothing really to do with the story in the show, but I thought it was fascinating and hilarious. I listened to these first two episodes the second day, which was, the second day of the releases. And the first two episodes were sponsored by Quibi. And then the day after
Spoiler alert for Quibi, everyone.
The day after I listened to those episodes, Quibi said that they were going bankrupt or they were closing or whatever and not going to exist anymore. And so I listened to these episodes again today, and I told Zach, I'm like, I bet you they already took those ads out, and there are no ads anymore. There's no ads at all. And it was like a pre-roll, a mid-roll, and a post-roll for Quibi. And it was hilarious. I just thought it was hilarious. As a podcaster who has done ads at times and then know a little bit about how ads work, they probably sold this giant block of ads to these people. Hopefully they got their money before Quibi's like, we're pulling the plug.
You would have to get the money before you put that on the first episode, right? I would.
There's probably like a contract of like a guarantee, and if they don't meet it, then they could get some money back or something like that. That's what I would think of with a big
per milli type thing, like listenership.
A big podcast like this, you'd be like, okay, well, we think we're going to get 2 million downloads per episode, so this is how much money you need to pay us, and if we don't meet that, you can get a portion back. I don't know. I don't know. That's just my opinion on a big show like this, because how do you tell them the numbers? How do you know the numbers before you post it? You know what I mean? It just has to do with all these names like Keegan-Michael Key and Aaron Mahnke and iHeartRadio and all these other things, hoping to bring the people.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a big show. It was super enjoyable to listen to. It was a great finisher for the spooky month.
It really was. And I just like how it was like we were able to get on at the beginning. Like literally when we recommended it, they weren't out yet. I just knew it was going to be good because of everything else that Aaron Mahnke's made.
And they're not done yet, right? It'll probably end on Halloween.
It will end on Halloween. So
if you want to check it out, you will be on the kind of the front end of this. You will be able to hear it as it's released. So it'll be a cool thing.
So that brings us to this week's recommendation. And this week, now that we're getting out of the spooky month, I have a show that I've been sitting on, and I've listened to every single episode. Again, that's what I do. And it's called Heavyweight. And it's by Gimlet. The reason I picked it is because I love a lot of the stuff that Gimlet makes. Pretty much if Gimlet comes out with a show, I'm going to give it a shot because it's usually now going to be on my new favorite podcast list.
Yeah, it's not really a gamble. So quick synopsis for Heavyweight. Maybe you've laid awake imagining how it could have been, how it might be yet, but the moment to act was never right. Well, the moment is here, and the podcast making it happen is Heavyweight. Join Jonathan Goldstein for road trips, thorny reunions, and difficult conversations as he backpedals his way into the past like a therapist with a time machine from Gimlet Media.
So I don't know how to explain Jonathan Goldstein's humor, but it is probably one of my favorite types. It's super dry. It's not like morbid or anything. It's just very self-deprecating, and he's oh god, he's so funny, and he says everything in such this monotone, dry way, but it's hilarious. I've listened to every single episode except for like he has some check-ins during COVID. I haven't listened to those because they're not like stories. It's just like checking in, I guess. I don't like that kind of stuff. A lot of the stuff that's been going on.
Checking in with me.
No, that's not what I mean. You know what I mean? There's just like boring things that people are just trying to make extra stuff. But the episode that we're going to recommend is called Jimmy and Mark. And it's one of my favorite episodes that they've done. And I think it's just because it's going to be a really good discussion. It's about these kids that they were 10 years old and they went on a 240-mile bicycle trip with no adult supervision. Wow. Like they're apparently had like very like hippie parents who's like, I just want my kids to like learn by themselves. And they're like, hey, you should ride your bikes to your aunt and uncle's house. And they like had friends that were like supposedly staying with them at the time, and they just went with them. And so these 10-year-olds went on this 240-mile bicycle trip. And it's an amazing story. And basically the whole thing with this show is a lot of times someone will come to Jonathan and be like, Jonathan, he'll tell them this story. Like I went with these other 3 kids on this 240-mile bicycle trip, whatever. I don't know how to get in contact with any of them. I've tried so many other ways. I can't find them. And he does kind of like investigative journalism to find the kids and reunite them, and they'll have like a conversation, or, you know, you'll get to hear them talk for the first time in like 40 years or something. Yeah. That's what cool. A lot of the episodes are about. So just to give you a little, insight, because if you listen to the show, you're gonna hear this phone call at the beginning, and you're like, "What the heck's going on?" He has a friend. I don't remember what her name is, but they're like best friends since they were like in middle school. And at the beginning of every single episode, he calls her right before he introduces the show, and she makes fun of him, and it's great and it's hilarious. And it's just like if I were to call Zach and him just roast me, and then I'm like, welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show. So that's one of the things that he does before every episode. Like
that's a funny.
And it's like a through line throughout the whole thing, and it's great. It's great.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. I'm excited. I mean, I've been wanting to talk about this one for a long time. And remember,
there's always more to discover.
Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We would love for you to get in touch. We have a Facebook group called the Podcast Discovery Club, and our Twitter is @thepdsofficial. We also record the show live every Friday night at 8 o'clock on Twitch. We would love for you to be part of the show while we're recording it.
If you want to support the show, we have a number of ways you can do that. From our Patreon to our affiliate links, they're always linked in the show notes. In the end, you support the show just by listening, and it means the world to us. So thank you so much for being a part of our journey.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.